Carrington left Jake's loft in a hurry after Marcus's little temper tantrum, trying to make it home before David did. Once there, she tried to relax her mind as she sat at her desk in her home office, trying to focus on the final touches of a design plan for another client, and then her phone buzzed. It was a text from Marcus. "We need to talk. Meet me. Usual place. 8 p.m., don't be late." Her heart skipped a beat. It wasn't a request. It was a demand. The familiar pull of excitement was quickly overshadowed by a heavy sense of dread. She stared at the message, feeling trapped between two worlds. Marcus had become increasingly unpredictable, and his obsession with her was starting to unravel everything. She took a deep breath, her fingers trembling slightly as she considered how to respond. But before she could even think of a reply, another text followed. "Don't ignore me, Carrie. You owe me this." A chill ran down her spine. His words were laced with accusation, as if he held some kind of power over her. And in a way, he did. He knew too much about her, about Jake, about everything she had to lose. Carrington glanced at the clock. David and the kids would be home soon. Dinner still had to be made, the laundry folded, the kids' homework checked. She wanted nothing more than to curl up into the safety of her home, to pretend this mess with Marcus didn't exist. But in actuality it did, and it was nothing she could do about it. It wasn't that simple anymore. She couldn't ignore him. If she didn't go, she knew he'd escalate. He had already started showing up unannounced in places he didn't belong, his jealousy growing more dangerous by the day. She typed a short response, trying to keep her emotions in check. "I'll be there." The message was sent before she had a chance to reconsider, before she could get up from her desk. Carrington looked closer at the computer as she saw a Facebook notification in red. She was curious as to see who had left her a message. She clicked on the faceless picture, and the message said, "Hi, Carrie. It's Ethan." Ethan had always been the one person from Carrington's past she tried to forget, but he had a way of showing up when she least expected it. But there he was, sending her a message as if no time had passed. Ethan was a secret she never should have kept, but now he's back, and he's back for a reason. She ended it quickly with Ethan for fear of losing David, but seeing his name again brought back a flood of memories. She hesitated, her finger hovering over the keyboard. She knew this was an invitation to revisit the past that she had buried deep down. After a long pause, hands trembling slightly, Carrington begins to type back. "Carrington, it has been a long time. I'm good. How are you?" Within minutes, his green light came on again. "Ethan, I saw your name and couldn't help but to reach out." Carrington, "Really? Wow, I'm glad you did. It's great to hear from you." Ethan, "So, did you ever get married to David? Got kids? What's up with you? Last time we spoke was right after you moved to Atlanta." As she sat there reading the last question before she replied, she thought to herself, "He sees all of my info on Facebook, so why is he asking things I'm sure he already knows the answer to?" She plays his game and begins to reply, "Carrington, yes, I'm married. I've been married for 20 years now. Yes, I have 3 children. What about you? Did you ever tie the knot?" Ethan, "Not at all," he said. "Love the life I have with the freedom to come and go as I please, and no one to answer to." Before Carrington could even type back, Ethan sent another. Ethan, "Wow. Do you ever think about us? About what happened back then?" It didn't take long for the conversation to shift. Carrington's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the question and the words staring back at her like a dare. "So," she replied, "Carrington, honestly, I try not to." There was a long pause before his next message came through. "Ethan, I still do. You were different. Carrie and I never forgot you." The door that had once been closed was suddenly ajar, and Ethan was on the other side, waiting. Carrington felt a familiar pull, the same one that had drawn her to him all those years ago. She knew it was dangerous. She knew that reconnecting with Ethan was going to be a mistake, especially now, with her already fragile marriage to David, her out-of-control affair with Marcus, and now that she fell on Jake's dick, She is just weaving a web that she cannot get out of. But a part of her couldn't resist the chance to relive those moments when she wasn't tied down by the responsibilities of being a wife and mother. Ethan wasn't just part of her past. He was a reminder of who she used to be before everything became complicated. And now, as the ghost from her past has resurfaced, Carrington found herself teetering on the edge of a familiar temptation, one she wasn't sure she had the strength to resist. She replied, Carrington, "That's sweet, Ethan. I really appreciate your honesty. Sure, let's grab some dinner and catch up. I would love that. I will reach out soon." Till Ethan. Okay, great. Sleep well and talk soon. Ethan ended the conversation with a winked emoji. Carrington stared at her computer screen long after Ethan's message had come through. You were different, Carrie. I never forgot you. His words lingered, tugging at memories she had buried deep, memories she had spent years trying to forget. She hadn't thought about him in so long, or at least that's what she told herself. But Ethan had a way of creeping back into her mind, reminding her of a time when everything felt different, when life had more color, more passion. That time had been brief, like a stolen moment in a much longer story, and it had left behind a secret she swore would never see the light of day. Carrington heard the front door open, and David's voice echoed throughout the house. David. Carrie, we're home! Carrington immediately got up from her desk, turned the computer off, and swiftly walked to the master bathroom as if she had been in there the entire time. Carrington. Hi, I'm up here in the restroom. I'll be down in a bit. She splashed water on her face and pulled herself together. Now she had to decide on how to tell David that she has to leave home in order to meet up with Marcus. Looking at herself in the mirror, she shook her head and turned off the light. David. Hey, how was your day? Carrington. Good. I had a good day. How was yours? The kids walked out of the kitchen through the dimly lit home and up to their bedrooms. David, tired, long day at the office, had a message today from someone named Marcus or Martin. However, didn't get a chance to contact him back. He called the office twice, but I had meetings all day, said it was urgent. The receptionist said he was persistent and rude. Carrington. Oh, really? She said with a little curiosity. I'm sure if it was important, he would have gotten in contact with you. It was probably nothing. And plus, anyone who is rude over the phone with the receptionist is just showing you the type of personality your potential client has. I wouldn't give him the time of day. Carrington looked at David under her eye as she advised David on what to do. Yeah, you're right, David said as he turned to walk up the stairs. Carrington looked at her watch, and it read 7:15 p.m. Oh, shit, she said. Midway to the top of the staircase, Carrington yelled after David from the kitchen. David, I have to run to my office. I promise I won't be long. I really have to go and pick up some material I have for a client's meeting tomorrow. Carrington listened for David's response. David reached the top of the staircase and turned halfway and said, Sure. He didn't even question her. Carrington stood still, waiting patiently for David's rebuttal, but it was none. She grabbed the keys off the counter, and as she was prepared to walk out the front door, it felt like she was sealing her own fate. On the way to the hotel, by 7:45 p.m., she found herself in her car, heading towards the hotel. The familiar rush of adrenaline mixed with dread as she gripped the steering wheel, her heart pounding louder with each mile. As Carrington drove toward the hotel, her mind swirled with conflicting emotions. The grip of Marcus's demand weighed on her, but suddenly her phone rang, startling her. She glanced at the caller ID. It was Jake. She hesitated for a second before answering, trying to steady her voice. Carrington, softly. Hey, Jake. Jake then pauses, voice shaky. Carrie, I've been thinking about what happened today. I think I want you to think about us and how good we can be together. Just think about it. Don't give me an answer, just think. That's all I ask you to do. Take it into consideration. Carrington's heart raced. She was already on edge, and now this. Jake had always been her rock, her best friend. He had never spoken to her like this before. Carrington, nervous. Jake, what are you talking about? Jake took a deep breath. I know this is out of nowhere, but I have to say it. I'm in love with you, Carrie. What happened between us today is all I've been thinking about. Carrington's breath caught in her throat. Of all the moments, it had to be now. She could hear the vulnerability in his voice, and for a second she forgot about Marcus, the hotel, everything. Her grip tightened on the steering wheel. Carrington whispers, "Jake, you don't know what you're saying. Right now, you're all caught up in your feelings, and now is not a good time. I..." Jake, interrupting. "No, I do. I know exactly what I'm saying. You're unhappy, Carrie. I've seen it for years. I've watched you struggle, and I've always been there for you, but I stayed quiet because I thought maybe you'd figure it out, but I can't stand on the sidelines anymore." Carrington blinked, her vision blurring with tears she didn't want to let fall. She pulled over to the side of the road, unable to drive any further as Jake's words sunk in. Carrington, "Jake, this is crazy. We've been friends for so long. Honestly, I didn't plan on what happened today to happen." We both fell and had a weak moment. Jake, I can't watch you destroy yourself anymore, Carrie. I know something's been going on with you. You're slipping away, and I can't let that happen. I love you. I always have." She sat there in silence, staring at the steering wheel, the weight of everything crashing down on her. Marcus's demand, Jake's confession, not to mention Ethan's email. Her heart twisted in knots. Carrington whispers, "Jake, this is all too much. I don't know what to say." "Jake, just say you feel it too. That I'm not imagining this. That it was real today, what happened." She wanted to scream. There was no way she could process any of this, not while driving to a hotel to meet another man, not while her life was already falling apart. She felt trapped in her own web of lies and deceit, torn between her past and her future. Carrington, "Jake, I I can't talk about this right now. I'm sorry, I have to go." Before he could respond, she hung up, her heart thudding against her chest. She wiped a tear from her cheek, started the car again, and drove towards the hotel. At the hotel, Carrington entered the secluded hotel room, her mind still reeling from Jake's confession. Marcus was already there, sitting in the corner of the room, a gun in his hand. His eyes darkened when he saw her, and the tension in the air was thick and suffocating. "Marcus," sternly his voice said, "you're late." Carrington swallowed hard, the weight of Jake's call still pressing on her. She tried to shake it off as she stepped further into the room. "Carrington, why do you have a gun, Jake? Please put it away, or I'm leaving," she demanded. "I couldn't get away earlier. I'm here now." Marcus stood, crossing the room toward her, his expression intense. He didn't care about her excuses. To him, her time was his. "Marcus," his voice sharp, "you think you can just ignore me? That I'll just wait around for whenever you decide you can fit me into your perfect little life?" Carrington flinched, his words cutting deeper than usual tonight. She wanted to defend herself, but her energy was drained. All she could think about was Jake, the mess she had created, and how she had ended up in this room again. Carrington, "Marcus, this isn't sustainable. You know that. We can't keep doing this." Marcus stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. He reached out, grabbing her arm gently but firmly, pulling her toward him. "Marcus," his voice now low, dangerous, "you don't get to decide when this ends, Carrie. Not after everything. I'm not some fling you can just toss aside when you're done. I love you." Carrington's breath caught. His words, once thrilling, now felt like chains tightening around her. There goes that L word again, she thought. Carrington, "Marcus, this has to stop. I can't. I can't do this anymore." His grip on her tightened slightly, his voice growing colder and more menacing. "Marcus, you owe me more than that, Carrie. You don't get to walk away from me like nothing ever happened. I won't let you." A chill ran down her spine. She could see it in his eyes, his obsession, his desperation, and it terrified her. Carrington, softly, "Marcus, please." He released her arm, stepping back slightly, but his eyes never left hers. "Marcus, quiet. If you walk away, Carrie, you'll regret it. You think you can just go back to your perfect little life with David? You're wrong. I won't let you forget what we had. What we did. What it meant to me." Carrington stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She realized in that moment that she wasn't just trapped in this room with Marcus, she was trapped in her own choices, and there was no easy way out. Carrington's pulse quickened as she stood frozen near the hotel door. Marcus loomed just a few feet away, his eyes dark and unreadable. The tension in the room was suffocating. She could feel the walls closing in, the air heavy with the weight of all the choices she had made. She took a step back, her hand still resting on the door handle, her mind racing. She needed to get out, to escape this situation, but something in Marcus's demeanor had shifted. He wasn't the same charming man who had once swept her off her feet. He was different, darker. Carrington, her voice trembling. Marcus, this isn't right. We shouldn't be here. I told you I'm done. I can't keep doing this. What do you want from me? She screamed. I have to go home. David will be looking for me if I don't return within an hour. I told him I was going to the office to pick up something for a client for tomorrow. It doesn't take long for me to go and come back. You know this. Marcus's eyes flickered with a dangerous glint as he moved closer, closing the distance between them. His tone was smooth, but there was an edge to it, a subtle warning beneath the surface. Marcus said softly, You don't get to decide when this ends, Carrie. You think you can just walk away after everything? Yeah, in the beginning, this was an affair, a one-night stand, but you came back for more, didn't you? He asked, demandingly. She swallowed hard, the fear creeping in. She had always known that their affair would lead to disaster, but she hadn't anticipated how far he would take it. The man standing before her now was a stranger, a far cry from the one who had made her feel alive. Carrington, pleading, Marcus, please, just let me go. Her voice cracked, betraying the fear she desperately tried to hide. But Marcus wasn't listening. He stepped closer, his fingers grazing her arm in what felt like both a caress and a threat. His touch, once thrilling, now sent a wave of unease through her. Marcus, whispering, You owe me this, Carrie. I need to feel you again. Panic surged through her as he tightened his grip, pulling her toward him. Carrington's breath quickened, her heart racing. She tried to pull away, but Marcus was stronger. His hands were firm, his voice soft but insistent. Carrington, struggling, Stop, Marcus! You're scaring me! For a brief moment, Marcus seemed to pause, his grip loosening slightly as he studied her face. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, regret, perhaps, or confusion, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. His expression hardened again. Marcus, low, intense. You think you can just go back to your life? To him? After everything we've been through? No, Carrie, I won't let you do that. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized just how far he had fallen. This wasn't love. It was control, obsession, and she had let it get too far. She had played with fire, and now she was trapped. Carrington, quietly, Marcus, please, don't do this. We're over. You have to let me go. I won't tell anyone, anything. Just let me go. But Marcus wasn't listening. His desperation was palpable, the fear of losing her pushing him over the edge. He pulled her closer, his breath hot against her skin as he whispered her name, a mixture of anger and longing in his voice. Marcus, you can't leave me, Carrie. You're mine. The words hit her like a slap, and she felt her resolve weaken. For a brief moment, the anticipation of what was going to take place turned Carrington on as she waited to see just how far Marcus would go. She imagined him kissing her roughly and tearing her panties off and fucking her with passion. For a brief moment, she wanted it just as much as he did. At this very moment, it was her desire to be fucked the way she wanted David to fuck her for years. But it wasn't David. It was Marcus. Carrington enjoyed the touch of Marcus's hands on her body. She began to get excited as his hands groped her in all places. Even though she was turned on, she couldn't let him control her, not like this. Summoning all her strength, she pushed against him, forcing him to release her. For a moment, they stood there, both breathing heavily, locked in a silent battle. Marcus's eyes tore into hers, filled with a dangerous intensity, but she held her ground. Carrington, firmly, this isn't love, Marcus. This is something else, and I won't be a part of it anymore. There was a flicker of something in his expression, pain, perhaps, or realization, but it quickly faded. He threw Carrington onto the bed as he mounted her like a horse. He held one arm across her chest to pin her down as he used his other hand to rip off her panties. Carrington laid there completely unafraid and wanting Marcus just as much as he wanted her. She knew this was crazy to want this type of arousal to happen, but she wouldn't stop him. Marcus pulled his pants down just below his thighs and began to forcefully shove himself inside Carrington repeatedly. She squirmed and wiggled as she tried to push him away. He began to fight back as the penetration began to go deeper. Carrington allowed him to completely take control, and she stopped fighting. Carrington gave in to his force and let her body indulge in a crime of passion. To her it wasn't rape, it was the type of midnight desire that her body longed for. Marcus felt Carrington's body relaxed as he noticed her enjoying the love he was administering. They kissed each other passionately as she rolled over on top of him to finish what he started. It was now her sexual desire. Marcus's body moved with hers as a smile rose upon his face. As they both climaxed together, he rolled back on top of her and said softly, "I knew this is what you wanted." She didn't respond. Without another word, she got up, fixed her clothes, and left the hotel room. Carrington's legs trembling as she walked down the hall. She could feel his eyes on her back, his presence like a shadow that would follow her long after she was gone. But as she stepped outside into the cool night air, she knew one thing for certain. From this one moment of lust, she just condoned his batshit craziness, and she was adamant that he was seriously never going to let her go. Carrington made it home, took a shower, and sat in front of her computer. David, unaware of the time, in the bedroom asleep, not knowing it was a little after midnight. Carrington stared at her computer screen long after Ethan's message had come through, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, frozen. The sound of his voice echoed in her mind. "You were different, Carrie. I never forgot you." His words stirred something in her, something she had long suppressed. Memories from a time when her life felt simple, before the responsibilities of marriage and motherhood consumed her. Back then, Ethan had been her confidant, a new love that she had never loved before, the one she had walked away from when life took her in a different direction. Her heart fluttered at the thought of seeing him again, but it wasn't just excitement she felt. There was guilt. Guilt for what she had become, for the secrets she held close to her heart. Secrets Ethan could never know. She swallowed hard, trying to push the thoughts away, but they clung to her like shadows, refusing to fade. "Carrie," Ethan's voice played in her mind again. She closed her eyes, leaning back in her chair, letting herself drift for just a moment. A time before the complexity of her life with David, friendship with Jake, before the affair with Marcus, and the chaos he had introduced, before the lies she told herself every day. She shook her head, trying to shake the memories away. She was being ridiculous. Ethan was part of her past, a past she couldn't change, but his words had reignited something within her. A part of her wanted to see him. Maybe it was time, she thought. Maybe it was time for him to know the truth. "Carrington," she thought to herself, "what are you doing?"